Hey, it's Nikki Thompson, and you're listening to Tea with Nikki, embracing your sexual energy. And today is a little bit of a different episode. So today I am doing a beautiful interview with Susana Frioni. Now, Susana and I met a number of years ago, probably close to 7 years ago online. And we crossed paths again earlier this year in person through a mutual friend. And while I've been doing these interviews in the podcast, I thought of her the other day because she is someone that I really looked up to 7 years ago when I first came across her online, who was really stepping forward, living her her life all in. And I truly admired her and what she was doing. So today's episode, I ask her questions about, what had happened for her to get to that place 7 years ago when I first started noticing her incredible events. And we talk about why they were just quite unique events. And then we also go into all sorts of stuff about where she is right now and what work she's doing, incredible work that she's doing now. And how has her life kind of gone into this massive shift over the past probably 10, 15 years? And it's such an interesting story. So I'm really excited to welcome Susana Frioni onto the podcast. Now, good morning, Susana. I'm so excited to have you here. This has just been one of those interviews that I've been excited about because I've actually kind of been stalking you and knowing you from the sidelines for a really long time. And to actually have you on here today is exciting. So thank you so much for coming.
Woo! I'm thrilled to be here. And it was so funny when we connected via whatever chat form we were using. And I was like, oh my God, look at that message from years ago. Okay. So yes, I'm honored to be here.
Yeah. So I actually, we connected through a business program that we did online many, many years ago. And I remember you hosting some kind of like sacred dance workshop or something.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because that was like, back then, this is, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I launched my first sacred dance event in, it was the end of 2013 when I started doing them, and they were more for private gigs, and then it became more public in 2014. So yeah, it was a little while ago.
Yeah, and I was on the sidelines kind of thinking, holy shit, how does she do that? Like, I want to go, but I can't go.
Why not?
Kind of where I was back then. And that's why when, we met again through a mutual friend at dinner earlier this year, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have you on the podcast, because for me, you were like so far ahead in this journey. And I was like, oh God, this is scary, but I want to do it. But back then, I just could not do it, go to something like that. It felt so out of my comfort zone, like leaps and leaps outside of my comfort zone to go to something like that. Whereas now I'm like, oh yeah, like
yeah.
That's what I love. So can you tell me about where that kind of came about, that whole concept? Because I'd love to know.
Yes. So the sacred dance experience came as a direct result of one of my friends was hosting a wellness retreat, and I was going to be one of the yoga teachers there. But she specifically asked for something of an icebreaker on the first evening, and she requested that it be a yoga rave because she'd been to a couple of them and loved them. I had heard of the yoga rave scene. I wasn't at that stage. I wasn't interested at all. I was like, hell no. But that was because internally I was starting to feel like a pull away from yoga. It started to feel a little bit limiting to me. So I was very aware of that, and something else is moving through. So I said to her, give me the 60 minutes and I'll create something phenomenal for your women coming to this retreat. And I'm so grateful that she trusted me because she actually didn't know me as a group fitness teacher before I became a yoga teacher. She sort of met me after my quarter life crisis, I like to call it, and a whole new life began for me. So she knew me more of like this deep Zen yoga teacher. And then essentially by that stage, I had, like I said, there was 4 years of yoga teaching experience plus 8 years of being a group fitness teacher. So I'd had a lot of experience already with group movement.
Yeah.
But at that stage, I had already, I think what happened as well, I was at a, what was it called? A 5 rhythms. I went to my very first 5 rhythms class, and something awoken within me. And it was simply the part of me that loved not being told what to do with like every breath and every little muscle, every little piece of my anatomy. Because I taught vinyasa yoga, but it was a very alignment based. And the freedom that gave me it was like just a shot of energy through my body and a bit of an awakening. Because also at that time, through sort of my spiritual crisis or awakening, sexual awakening, whatever you want to call it, I had also stepped away from my life before, which naturally I was 25 at that age. So there was, you're no longer going out clubbing, you're no longer just having that particular outlet. Somehow my quest for becoming, honoring my truth and living like a life of integrity and being really well somehow got serious. And if you like boring, if I'm completely honest. And music and dance has always been one of my portals through. And so that 60 minutes was my opportunity to literally bring together everything I'd learned from yoga, everything I'd learned from meditation, everything I'd learned from, my group fitness world. I was also, I'd also done a year-long training as a deep coach, I should say. So that was pretty much all its principles were about using presence as the foundation for change.
Yeah.
And there is something about watching women come to life on the dance floor. So, and the other thing I was doing as well, I had mentored with a woman called Belinda Davidson, where I was doing a lot of, the energy medicine work. And so it was just this fusion of everything. And it was such an amazing experience. One of the women there hosted an event a few months later, and she's like, you've got to come along. It was like a radical self-love party. It was a panel discussion amongst 4 speakers. And then I was given 30 minutes afterwards to create the embodied experience of everything that they spoke about.
Wow.
And there was about, I think, 100 or 120 women at that event. And again, it was just like a big hit. And a few months later, I was like, okay, I'm about to do my own event. And so then it just sort of became Sacred Dance.
Yeah. Wow. That is incredible. Like I remember just feeling so inspired by seeing this and you just going all out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be able to do that. But I couldn't back then. Like I was still in the stage of working out who I was. Like I was, going through, maybe I was probably a few years behind you in your own journey. So that's what I wanted to ask you about, is you were talking about you're going through this transition. What do you think kind of opened up your mind to moving in this way? Like, was there like a pivotal moment where you've just kind of woken up? Was there like, oh, I just don't want to be hungover, or I just don't want to be in this space anymore. I want to be a healthier version of me?
None of that. So at that stage, I became a mum when I was 21. I was married at 21 as well, and I graduated from uni. I lived a whole life by the time I was 21.
Yeah.
And I then those next few years was this really confusing time for me. I was clinging so hard to my life before, thinking that, I've just had a child, it's all good. I can carry on with this very full and life that was full of zest. And yet I couldn't, there was this underlying misery just literally soaked in my body. And my natural disposition is to be positive, the eternal optimist, the bubbly one, the one who can easily lift the energy in the room. And yet it was almost like this facade, like the separation between what I was portraying in my outer world and my inner world were becoming worlds apart. And I was questioning motherhood. I was questioning monogamy. I was questioning marriage. I felt my life suddenly like, I'm just a mum. What is happening here? I pushed so hard in the fitness arena, one, because I loved it. Two, it was sort of my source of happy hormones and endorphins. And yet I noticed my body just starting to break down in certain ways. Like I was constantly losing my voice. Anytime I'd sort of get my period, I noticed my immune system was obviously much weaker because I tend to be getting sick, and just little nigglies in my joints. Like I always felt constantly sore. And yet there was definitely, I think for many women, and at least in my experience, like after having a child, I was really focused on quote unquote getting my body back.
Oh my God. Yes.
And I had already bought a pole. I had tried pole dancing before I got pregnant, and that was something I loved. I just loved the pole dancing, and that was definitely something that sort of I toyed with after having my daughter. But again, it was honestly this disparity of
Yeah.
this misery. And I'm talking, I was literally waking up crying. I'd go to sleep with like tears rolling down my face. It was like, I'm not crying, but my body is crying. And again, there were some challenges in my marriage. Like we're having conversations about, do we open our marriage? And I didn't even know exactly what that was, or if that was even something I wanted. I was wrestling with, here's this life I've created and I loved. I love this man. I love my kids. And yet, how is it that I'm constantly attracted to other people? What is that?
Yeah.
And that I would say ended up being that's been the quest. That's been the inquiry. And so I went to Vipassana as a way to just take a break from a life that started to feel very chaotic, very out of control, very way out of integrity with a lot of my own values. And it was almost like felt like I was living this double life. And my idea of going to Vipassana, I did not go there to learn to meditate. In fact, it's almost like I didn't realize that this was a meditation course. I went there to escape. I went there just to like have a break from being a mum and having a break from my work and just being alone with my own thoughts and not being tempted by anyone else. And yet it was at Vipassana that the fast version is essentially I fell in love with my roommate. and even then, I thought I didn't think much of it. To some ways, I'd always kind of been wrestling with my sexuality more from the point of view that, like I said, it was around the desire. I never ever imagined that I'd have a relationship with a woman. I definitely had attractions with women, but it wasn't also a big deal. It wasn't something I was, struggling with internally. But here I was, really attracted to this woman. We had an intense connection. And after Vipassana, within a couple of weeks, I quit my job. My marriage ended. And then I started a love affair with this woman, and we were together on and off for about 3 years. And it was fucking phenomenal.
Wow.
And for me, there was like a few, like my mind expanded in the sense of, I remember sitting on that meditation mat, and it was like self-responsibility. It was like, oh my God, I am the one who created all this misery. Not him, not her, not this, not that, like me. Therefore, if I've created this, then I can also create something entirely new. That was the first one. And the other big thinking was also being in a relationship with a woman after. I remember having this thought of, holy shit, I thought this was impossible. Like, there was no freaking way I'd have a relationship with a woman, but here I am in love with a woman. What on earth, like, what else have I been deeming impossible in my life? And it was just my mind cracking open in that sense.
Wow, what a, like, such an interesting perspective to kind of look at how you had labeled all, like, so many different things impossible, and you're experiencing what you had thought was impossible. So now you're like, well, what else had I said was impossible? Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
And literally that was now I start my own business. Now I move in this direction, and I'm just going to give everything a go. And I'm going to actually have the lived experience, and therefore from that have information to decide, does this work for me or does that not, instead of making those judgments beforehand.
Wow, that's an incredible journey.
It's been a big journey.
Wow. I had no idea. I feel as though I must have come across you at a time where you've just gone through that. Is that?
Yeah, so
Perhaps that's when we've kind of crossed paths initially.
Correct. So by 2013, that was at the stage where my relationship with the woman completely ended, and I was sitting in that beautiful space. I call it a beautiful space, where the inquiry now became, oh, if I'm not with a woman and I'm not with a man, so like where does my attractions lie? What kind of relationship do I really want? And I think naturally for women in particular, it's only because I'm a woman. Of course, I'm sure this happens for men, but in the moment I think, you are with a man and then you're with a woman, you're always going to get the question like, so are you a lesbian? Does that make you a lesbian? And you're having to put a label on it. I understand labels and naming things is very, very useful. But when it comes to our sexuality, I think it gets a little bit tricky. And for me, I just remember being in that space of like, I'm not locked in either or. What do I actually choose here? I know some people say they can't choose it, and that's absolutely true for them. For me in that moment, I just remember, let's actually pay attention to what my body is responding to. And at that time, like, I was really listening to my body. I was letting my body, I come from the belief that your body is an absolute truth teller. So wow. I had to pay attention, like when I'm interacting with people, what's happening? Is it a genuine connection? Is this like just a heart-to-heart connection? Or is there some sexual energy transactions going on underneath here? Is this just a hormonal chemistry thing going on? What is happening? And that was just a really beautiful experiment. So you definitely met me at a time when it was like, I'm wide open and really dedicated on, that soul purpose. Like, what on earth am I here to do career-wise?
Yeah, because I think that I was so just drawn to your energy, and I remember just following along to the events that you were doing and just some of the work that you were doing, and I just remember thinking, wow, like I'd always been in such a typical space. To me was like I was the good girl, did all of the, the right things. I went to the uni, got the house, the husband, the kids, and all of those things. And so for me, around that point was kind of this feeling as though I was living someone else's life, but I didn't know how to shift that. And so I was so drawn to you because I looked at you and thinking, holy shit, she's just like going all in. I want to do that. I just don't know what that even looks like for me. And it took me a couple of years after that before I even really started to crack it open, I guess. So it was just really interesting to hear the whole story behind that. We don't often hear what happened, like how people get to where they're at. So I'm just, you shared so openly and so beautifully. So thank you for that. So where are you now? Where are you at now?
Oh, so what is this, 2020? If we go like 7 years, and 2020 has been an interesting year.
Oh my gosh.
Right now in this moment, I am focused on, funnily enough, getting ready to teach others the modality that has become sacred dance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
People have been asking for this for a while. I personally was never ready. Felt like, one, just a big responsibility. Two, it came so naturally to me. I wasn't even sure how I could break it down to teach others for them to do.
Yeah.
And so these last few years have been me like paying closer attention and really unpacking that. And this year was the year I finally synthesized it all in a way that I feel really, really good for others to now run with it and, make it their own. So that's where I've been on the work front. I'm also gearing up for another podcast series. I've been running that podcast for a while now, and after the first couple of years I changed it to series. So I've done some on dating, some on sex, we've done a kink series, and we've done a MILF series because like there's just something about motherhood that causes a bit of a reckoning when it comes to one's sexuality.
Yeah.
And the new one is money and partnerships, something I've definitely been exploring myself. I've been in a relationship for over 2 years now, and with a man, just to clarify that, because we're talking a lot about being with a woman earlier. And I've really come to believe that, I thought sex was taboo.
Yeah.
I think money, particularly in partnership, is feeling even more taboo. There's just so much wrapped, because you have to explore. You can't just explore money on its own. You have to explore, depending on your dynamics, but it's like the domestic life, the erotic life, the financial life, if you've got kids, the parenting life. It's all woven in there. And so you have to have conversations about the other ways that everyone contributes that have nothing to do with money.
Oh, wow.
Because to reduce everything to $1 does not work. So that's been really enlightening for me. And other than that, I've been soaking in the slow life. There's definitely been a shift for me in energy, in desires. And our desires are forever evolving. And I think for many of us, it can be hard to like keep up with them. And it's not necessarily keep up. I think it's more letting go of desires when they've been fulfilled, or then they no longer have that fire or aliveness or life or spark within them, and something else is calling you. And that's definitely where I'm at right now.
Oh, that's incredible. And I'm looking forward to that new series. I mean, my partner and I were having this conversation just on Sunday night. We're sitting around the fire and we were talking, like we've been together for 18 months now, and I've got children, he doesn't. And there's like a whole shift around financial stuff. We don't live together, but we're starting to have conversations around what does money together look like. And it's, especially, the only other relationship, like significant relationship, was my marriage. And we entered with nothing, both of us, and created a family together and kind of grew from there. And so it was just kind of, we were just fumbling along as we both went. Whereas now I'm at a different stage of my life, and I've got 3 dependent children, and a level of assets, and he's at that stage of his life as well, but he doesn't have kids. And so looking at what does that even look like? How do we make that work? Because for me, do I want to let go and share finances? Because for me, I'm quite happy doing my own thing. I love the freedom of having full financial control. And that is, I know, a story there around, there's a whole story around why that's where I'm at there. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have around that as well. So I'll have to tune in. That's a big one.
It's a big topic. And for anyone listening, like, oh my God, yes. Look, at the end of the day, like most things, as long as you're always inquiring, like particularly into your assumptions and any agreements that you make, like constantly, and you are choosing what feels best for you, like that's all that matters at the end of the day. What happens though is that we're running into things, and we're creating a lot of agreements, contracts even, based on a whole lot of assumptions and a lot of things that are not actually spoken about. And for women, it shows up in, and I'm pissed, or I'm resentful, or I'm feeling, powerless or pathetic or a failure, something. They're the signs you have to pay attention to. And it means there's a lot of unspoken things going on. So I can't wait to share when that's time.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's so exciting. Okay, so before we finish up, I like to ask this question for everyone that comes on here, because women listening, like, I love that we can do these interviews and really kind of hear behind the scenes, because it's not widely known generally. We put all our best face forward on social media and all the rest of it. But I don't want to just leave them with information. I love to leave them with, what can they actually do? How can they start to make a little bit of that shift if they're feeling any kind of connection with your story and with your own journey? So what would be something that you could recommend that they could do in their own life right now, if they're hearing this and they're thinking, yes, this is what I've really needed to hear?
I'm going to recommend that, because one of the biggest complaints I hear is like women not having time. And so I'm going to emphasize, you must make time for you. You must carve out time to pursue the things that bring you to life. And you must really protect that time. And this, if you happen to have a career that you love and that brings you a lot of joy, yes, then that's like, you're ahead of a lot of people. And if you can say that really brings you a great deal of joy and fills you up and, has you like marinating in a whole lot of pleasure, like awesome. But I would really challenge everyone to carve out that time away from your kids, away from your partner, even away from your friends, just for you, that deeply nourishes you and really protect that time. And if you don't know what that is, then consider this permission to go explore. Go try lots of different things. Even if you get a little, that niggle or a curiosity, or you just hear about something. Like, you do not know sometimes what brings you to life until you are in it and amongst it. So
yes. Oh, I love that. I love it. And I hear a lot of women, we just did this 10-day orgasm challenge in one of my groups. And one of the biggest things is that they just didn't know what brought them joy anymore. They just didn't know. And I love what you're saying here. It's like, just go give yourself some time and it'll come to you. Like, if you don't give yourself any time, you're never going to work it out.
no, it's like you are putting yourself in the way of whatever does bring you joy. And sometimes it's really simple. Like the presence, like, do not underestimate the simplicity of presence either. You guys would be amazed at what brings me pleasure. Like, I often look to social media sometimes and I'm like, seriously, the behind the scenes life is not social media worthy. Like, I experience so much pleasure. Sometimes I laugh at myself. I'm like, I can't believe I'm experiencing pleasure right now while I'm sweeping the floors. How's this become like a meditative act and something I feel my whole body come alive with? What is with that? I don't care, but I just love the simple pleasures. So don't, and I think that's really important because we can also get in the mindset that we have to, one of the reasons we don't have time is because it feels like another thing to do. Like it's, like we're adding more to our life. And instead I want to say, just carve out time to become more present to your life.
Yeah. Oh, that is beautiful. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Like, just this is just coming up for me as well, almost daily. Like, it's, I'm doing the work and I'm and I'm at the moment I'm doing so many different things, and just little things, like my coach will tell me that, or a friend will tell me, it's like, just be present. Like, what's your body feeling? And, this is what I teach and what I do practice, but I often feel as though I'm coming from a place of like consciously I'm thinking, but I'm not going deeper to that, like feeling into it.
Yeah.
And that's just beautiful. So everyone's going to be listening to this story and being like, okay, I need to follow this chick. I need to find out more. So where could they find out more from you and even your podcast?
Best place is my website, obviously, susanafrioni.com. And I'm also on Instagram at Susana Frioni. I have not posted on there for months as I've been deep in the sacred dance, but they are two places. And of course, if you are on my website, my newsletter is, anyone who's on my newsletter is usually, they get the inside stuff first.
Cool. Well, I will definitely put the links in the show notes for people to be able to connect with you. And I just want to acknowledge, like, you're just leading through your own journey and sharing this. And it's just been exactly what I think women need to hear, is that we can do things differently. We can step back and, this is the life we've created, which means it's also, we can create something else as well if it's not what we really, really want. And that's okay. And I just love hearing that you've just gone and done that. And it wasn't always like an easy journey, but it's so beautiful to hear where you're at now as well. It's fantastic. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. And thank you for having me and asking such awesome questions.
Oh, this is just a great conversation. Well, I'm sure we will definitely be in touch again very soon. And I hope you have an awesome, next few weeks, especially doing all of what you're doing and enjoying the last bit of winter, like what the last few days of winter now.
That's it. It'll be like no more bonfires soon.
I know. I'm not looking forward to that part.
Mm.
So thank you.